Go for it.
However God instructs me. Thank you.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am alcoholic, and I do have experience working the steps, following the directions in our textbook. This meeting is following those directions. Those are the directions that help me find a relationship with a higher power, which I'm now comfortable calling God. And I can even use a male pronoun, and it doesn't bother me as a result of doing this work. And I have completed direct amends. There are living amends, which I still practice. And I live in the solution today, which is steps 10, 11, and 12. There is a big difference between the fellowship of AA and the spiritual program of action. For those of you who've come here to this meeting, this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous where we discuss, study, practice, learn the spiritual program of recovery. The fellowship is a wonderful source that if I had not seen somebody else who'd recovered, I would not have known it was possible for me to recover. So it's really vital that we look around our Zoom room or any other room and notice that there are people whose eyes are glowing and glistening and they have smiles on their faces and they laugh, and life is no longer a drag. And I say that because when I came to these meetings, when I first came, and next week it'll be 39 years that I have come to this program. Um, I was sorry and sad and suicidal and not a happy camper. So I went to the fellowship meetings for a period of time, and people said that the solution was the steps. Ah, great! I started going to step meetings. Step meetings, we read, at least when I went to meetings, we read the 12 and 12. And the 12 and 12 is really a commentary on the steps, which is great, but it doesn't have the directions. And the way we read it in the books, in the meetings I went to, it was kind of like a book club. And we would read a paragraph and then people would share and, whatever. And I can be pretty good at book clubs, but that didn't mean I was working the steps. So 13 years later, I heard someone talk about this kind of meeting, and I was curious. I heard them say that you couldn't talk. That didn't bother me particularly. I was still very curious. So I packed my car, 4 other women, myself, and off we drove to a meeting. I lived in Massachusetts at the time, and I went to this meeting, and I heard a man speak in a way that I'd never heard anyone share before. Now, I didn't know him, but the story he told, and he happened to be talking about the doctor's opinion, which is step 1. The story he told, I knew that if I had met this man while he was active, I would have been in trouble. He was not the kind of guy that I would have wanted to be, in the same room. He's the kind of person I would have crossed the street and hidden in an alley or just done anything I could not to be visible to him, because he was a danger to himself and society. But the man who was sharing about that story was a man that I wanted for the first time to have what he had. He had a message of depth and weight that totally shouted at me, the newcomer, that this guy had a solution. And for the first time, even though I'd been in program now for 13 years, I worked in quotations, the steps by reading the 12 and 12 repeatedly and reading the sheet of 12 steps and putting little mental check marks next to them. Even though I thought I'd worked the steps, this man clearly had done something I hadn't done, and I wanted what he had. So I went to another meeting that week. In fact, I began to chase these meetings because I heard what I now realize is a solution. And prior to that, I'd been hearing commentary, you know, people commenting about their lives, and in some cases, maybe even complaining about their lives and telling you how bad it was and so forth, and dramatizing, what it was. And we can tell good stories and we can laugh and we can, in fact, what we just read tonight, which is the first part of step 12, we're encouraged to match our prospect's mood. And so if he or she is in a funny mood and humorous mood, well, we can match that. If they're serious, we can match that and so forth. What great advice. What great advice to just be present with another person, be totally present with our hearts open, knowing that there but the grace of God go I. Because if you're there on a 12th step conversation, you're in a better place than the fellow or the gal that you're talking with. So I wanted what this person had. I chased it. I went to another meeting. I was determined to get a sponsor. And there were exactly 3 women who were qualified to sponsor. And I went up to the first one and she said no. She was full. The second one said no. I'm so, so grateful. The third one said yes. And approximately, I don't know, maybe 8 weeks later, I don't think it was even that long, I was writing. The famous writing, whatever that was. I didn't know what it was, but maybe that was the cure. Maybe that was what was going to fix me. Well, it turns out that the whole purpose of this book, and it didn't say it particularly in this chapter, but it says it elsewhere, is to help you find a relationship with a higher power that will solve your problem, all your problem, not just the drinking problem, any problem. And so that's the purpose of the steps. The solution is not the steps. The solution is finding a relationship with a higher power. And as I told you, this process helped me do that. When I came to this program, I believed God existed. So when I saw step 2, which said came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, that was where my little mental check mark went next to that line on the sheet of steps. And it went there because I believed in God, so I didn't have to come to believe, so I thought. Now, I hope you hear the arrogance in my voice, and I know those of you who can see me can see that I'm being, sarcastic here. But I put that little mental check mark because I believed God existed and I didn't need to be restored to sanity. And why did I say that? Well, it turned out that I have credentials and I've worked in a psychiatric hospital. I went home at night. I had the keys. I didn't need to be restored to sanity. It's the people in that institution that needed to be restored to sanity. They were what our society said were mentally ill. Little did I know, I've suffered from a major mental illness, and that the solution is, again, this spiritual solution, which is finding that higher power. But fortunately, when I heard that man speak and was willing to go to any lengths, got myself a sponsor, read the first 64 pages as I was instructed. I didn't look up words. I'm way too smart for that. I have a great vocabulary. Thank goodness for sponsees, because now I look up words. Like today, I was giving instructions to a sponsee for her the writing in her the 4th step on the sex conduct, and unjustifiably aroused jealousy, bitterness, suspicion. So we both said, well, what does unjustifiably mean here? Because there's no justification for arousing jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness. So we looked up that word unjustifiably. So today I'm teachable. I wasn't when I first started. So I urge you, if you're listening and something that is being said, whether by me or other speakers who share, etc., captures your soul, and you say to yourself, like I said to myself, there's something different here and I want what they have, and I'm willing to go to any lengths. Well, some of the lengths are to humble yourself and get stupid. You know what I mean? Be open to learning. And with all my academic degrees, I feel so lucky that I am here and that I am open to learning. At any rate, I worked with that sponsor until she moved out of state. At that point, I was just about to finished my writing. I then got a second sponsor. I gave away my fifth step. I had an amazing spiritual experience in the end of my fifth and in step 6 and 7. And I really felt I was catapulted, as they say in another previous reading, into that fourth dimension. And I've never felt the need to return. Never felt the need to go back to a three-dimensional life. It's boring, folks. It ain't satisfying at all. So at any rate, I was now at steps 8 and 9. And strangely enough, I was also at steps 10, 11, and 12. Why? Because that's the solution. The solution is to continue to take daily inventory. When these crop up in step 10, to recognize it. And I now know what to do to, take it to God, talk to others, make amends, and so forth. And step 11 is vital. For those of you who are writing, you are doing an exercise to help you get in touch with a higher power on I hope, a daily basis, because you're writing daily, because that is what we need to do. That's what I need to do on a daily basis, is bring myself to that higher power. And again, be open for instruction, be open for guidance. Let God guide me today. And that's step 11. And then here we are in step 12. Well, if I've done these things, I've had a spiritual awakening and spiritual experience. I'm not the same person that came here 38 plus years ago. And I remember the old timers saying you had to change the person that you brought in order to recover. I did not know that, but they were somewhat right that person had to change, but they were wrong about the fact that I had to change her. You see, I cannot change myself. Now, I had gone to therapy and I worked with counselors, and at one point I was even on psychiatric medication and so forth. But I can't change myself. However, when I humbled myself to get a sponsor in this big book program, follow the directions she showed me that were right there in the big book. Who knew there were directions? When I did that and I followed those directions, I did get a relationship with a higher power. That relationship continues to grow, which is step 11 again, and continues to help me be a different person. It's not me. In step 7, we asked God to remove those defects of character. I can't remove them. I can name them now. I can see when they crop up. There's like a physical thing in my body that tells me that something has cropped up and I need to examine it. I used to just medicate over it. You know what I'm talking about. I ignored that stuff. And today it's like, no, I can feel it. And it's a tickle that tells me, pay attention, Nancy, something's off. The ego is trying to take command. And so I stop and I pause, as I've been instructed in the book. And I take a moment and I try to tune into that higher power and let that power direct and guide me. If I'm quiet enough and if I want it enough, it happens. And today I carry this message to others. When the 12th step was initially written, the manuscript actually said that we carried this message to others, especially alcoholics. It was later changed to, the current wording. I don't need to have an alcoholic to carry this message. Today, my conduct, the way I operate in this world, tells other people that I'm not the same person I was 38 years ago, who waddled into these rooms, miserable, unhappy, suicidal, not feeling useful, having, a futile existence, wondering if life was worth living, all that. I'm not that person. Today, I have tremendous joy. And talk about joy. The very first paragraph, I think, talks about the joy of living is to carry this message and to see other people recover. And I have to tell you, there is huge joy in seeing other people recover, not just my sponsees. When I come to these meetings, now there's so many people here I don't know, but if I were to come back again and again, and I may not be able to because I have a committed in-person meeting on Wednesday nights. I'm the secretary for that group. So I took a recess today. I'm sure they won't mind, but there's something special about watching people return week after week who are doing this work, and they change. They change. And my spirit is lifted, and they tell stories of how their higher power works in their life. And it just reinforces my own, my own program and my own desire to keep working this program. And so, yes, the joy of living marks the 12th step. We talk about working with others, and they give us a lot of suggestions about basically, as I mentioned, matching their mood, not trying to educate them about anything religious. I don't know anything, However, let them be curious how it was that I was as bad, if not worse, than they were. And today, the person talking to them is not that person. Let them be curious. Let them ask. Let them wonder. Let them kind of want it. You see, this is a program for people who want it, not for people who need it. That's so important because when I first came into these rooms, I thought anybody who had a problem needed it, and I wanted to carry the message, you know? But this is a program for people who want it. If you've come here tonight, it's because there's something in your soul wanting this. You want recovery. I do. That's why I'm here. And so it's a program for people who want it. And it says, we have no monopoly on God. I did something which the first 100 alcoholics basically did, and they wrote their directions in this book, and I've tried to follow those directions. And as a result, I too am in a different place, a better place than I was before. And now, if you want what I have, what I have to offer you is the directions. And I don't have to make up anything. I remember the first time somebody asked me to sponsor them in this program. Now, I'd been asked to sponsor 13 years previously when I was in open AA in, discussion meetings. And at that time, I thought I was supposed to bring all the knowledge I had as a counselor, as an empathetic friend, as an advisor, and, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't work. That's not what people need. Maybe they want it, but they ain't what they need. And today I now have something to carry. I carried a mess before. Today I carry a message. And the message is that if you find a power greater than yourself and develop that relationship, truly let go of you being in charge, miraculous things will happen and you'll recover. I've seen it happen time and time and time again. So I think that's what I want to share with you about the 12th step. And I look forward to hearing your experiences. Remember the joy of living. It's the joy of living that we share by working this program. Thank you.
Thank you so very